So welcome back to another video. In this video, we're going to be talking about how to solve simultaneous equation, and we are going to solve more problems on simultaneous equations. So for this one, we are going to be dealing with this equation 2x minus 5y is equals to 0 and 3x is equals to 4y plus 7. So we want to solve what? Let's solve using substitution method. So what we want to do here now, the first thing we want to do when we see any question like this is, and we want to solve it using what? Substitution method. What we need to do is what? Take our first equation, which is 2x minus 5y is equals to 0. And then what we want to do is make either x or y, which is the dependent variable in this equation, or what we are looking for. The dependent variable is simply what we are looking for. So we want to make either x or y the subject of formula. So for this case, we are going to be making what? S the subject of formula. So we're going to come here and then we are going to try and make x the subject of formula. Now, in order to make x the subject of formula, you want x to be at the left side of the equation and y at the right side of the equation. So what do you do to remove? We want to eliminate this negative 5y. The only thing we can do is what? To add the opposite sign of that, which is what? Positive 5y to both sides of the equation. So by doing that, you're going to have 2x minus 5y plus 5y. You know, when you add this together, you're going to get 0 is equals to 0 plus 5y. Now, once we add 0 plus 5y, we know that we're going to have what? 2x is equals to 5y. What can we do next? What we need to do next is what? We want to take away what? The coefficient of x. And the only way we can take away the coefficient of x, since x is combined to 2, the coefficient of x in this case is 2. And since they are combined together by what? Multiplication, then we need to use the opposite of multiplication, which is what? Division, to take away x. So we divide both sides by 2, which is exactly what you can see here. Divide both sides by 2. And then we get our value for x as this. So this is our value for x. Keep that in mind. This is not really our value for x, but this is the equation of our value for x. Now let's come to the second part here. Now what we want to do is what? We want to take our second equation, which is this one here, this equation here, and then we want to what? Substitute. Anywhere we see x in this equation, we want to substitute this value that is here. This value here, which is 5 over 2 times y. So anywhere we see x in this equation, we replace it with what? 5 over 2 times y. And that's exactly what we did here. So we are going to have 3 times 5 over 2 times y is equals to 4y plus 7. Now you can see that by substituting it, we've been able to convert equation 2 into a linear equation. So now what we want to do whenever you have what? Whenever you're trying to multiply an whole number and a fraction is numerator, we multiply the numerator, and denominator multiply the denominator. For these three, we have what? We have an invisible one, which we are not going to bother about. The numerator is what is on top of the fraction, and the denominator is what is below. So when you multiply 3 times 5, we give you 15, and 1 times 2, we give you 2. So that's why we have what? 15 over 2y is equals to what? 4y plus 7. Now what we want to do here is to what? Simplify both sides. Now how do you simplify both sides? You remember that in order to make anything the subject of formula, you want that thing to be on the left side of the equation. So now we want what? We want this anything y to be on this side. So what do? Since y is positive here, then we need to use the opposite of that, which is what? Negative 4y. So we are going to subtract 4y from both sides in order to what? In order to eliminate y from this side, because 4y minus 4y will give you 0. So it will be eliminated. Now we are going to have what? 15 over 2y plus minus 4y is equals to 4y plus 7 plus minus 4y. Now, when you add that together, you know that we are going to be left with what? 15 over 2y plus minus 4y is equals to what? 7, because we are going to, this is going to cancel out. I should have done this with the equation, but let's move on. Now, how do you simplify when you have this kind of thing? The first thing you want to do is what? Since the denominator here is just what? 1. All we need to do is what? We need to look for the LCM. And let's keep it simple. What we want to do is what? Since we have what? Just 2 and 1, we are simply going to multiply what? Negative 4y by 2. If you want to understand how to do LCM, then you should watch my video on that, because that's a whole different topic on how to handle fractions. So here we're going to have what? After doing that, we're going to have what? 15y minus 8y. 15y minus 8y, you know, will give you 7y. And that's why we have what? 7y over 2 is equals to 7. The next thing we want to do is what? Remember, we want to make y the subject of formula. Since y is combined to 7 over 2 by multiplication, we simply divide both sides by 7 over 2. Since we want to make y, and that's exactly what we did here. 7 over 2 divided by 7 over 2 is equals to what? 7 divided by 7 over 2. This one will cancel, so we have what? Y is equals to. Now, if you don't know this already, when you have 7 divided by a fraction or an whole number divided by a fraction, all you just need to do is what? Flip the fraction. So here I'm going to have what? 7 times 2 divided by 7. And that's exactly what gave us what? Y is equals to 2. Remember, if you have 7 divided by a fraction, this is the fraction here. All you are going to do is what? This 7 times the denominator divided by the numerator. So 7 times 2 divided by 7, you get your answer. Now, the next step after getting your y, remember I said that this is the equation of what? This is the equation of x. So you want to substitute this value for y into this equation here. You want to substitute this value for y into this equation here. So we are going to have what? 5 times 2. That will give you what? You come here and you're going to have what? This is your equation for x. And you're going to have what? 5 times 2, that will give you 10, divided by 2, that will give you what? 5. So after simplifying both sides, you can say that we are going to get our value for x. So now we are going to solve the same question using what? Elimination method. So let's solve the same question using elimination method. You see, the beauty about elimination method is it is a lot faster and it is shorter. So if, for example, you are dealing with a theory question, I will most of the time advise that you use what? Elimination method, because it is a lot faster. So the basic thing you need to understand about elimination method is, in order to solve using elimination method, the coefficient, which is what is in front of either x or y, the coefficient of the dependent variable has to be equal. So this is the coefficient of y here in equation 1, and this is the coefficient of s, this is the coefficient of s in equation 2. So basically, if you want to use the elimination method, you just want to make sure that the coefficient of any of the dependent variable in the both equation or in the two equations are equal. That means in order to use the elimination method, the coefficient of x, if you want to eliminate x, has to be the same thing in equation 1 and has to be the same thing in equation 2. And the coefficient of y, if you want to eliminate y, has to be the same thing in equation 1 and has to be the same thing in equation 2. But in order for us to see this very, very clearly, let's rewrite equation 2. So you can see this equation 2 here. We wrote it in a proper form, or in the standard form an equation or a simultaneous equation should look like. So basically what we did here is what we subtract 4 from both sides. I expect you to understand that now, so I'm not going to be repeating it, so we can be faster and I can give out more important informations. So basically we subtract 4 from both sides and then we equate it to 7. Now if we write the two equations back, which is exactly what we did here and here and here, you see that the equation, we write it back. Now if you analyze, you see that the coefficient of y in equation 1 is not -5, and the coefficient of y in equation 2 is -4. The coefficient of s in equation 1 is 2, and the coefficient of x in equation 2 is 3. Now what we want to do is make either the coefficient of x or the coefficient of y in both equations equal. Now the only way we can do that is by multiplying what? Equation 2 with the coefficient of y and multiplying equation 1 with the coefficient of y in equation 2. Let me repeat that again so it's clear. What we want to do is what we multiply the whole of equation 2 by the coefficient of y, that is if we want to eliminate y in equation 1. Or if we want to eliminate, and then we now multiply the whole of equation 1 by the coefficient of y in equation what? 2. That means that you know that what? Negative 5 times negative 4 is the same thing as what? Negative 4 times negative 5. So in this case, let's assume we want to eliminate what? We want to eliminate y, for example. That's exactly what we're going to do here. We're going to eliminate y in this example. So we're going to multiply the whole of equation what? 2 by what? We're going to multiply the whole of equation 2 by negative 5 and then multiply the whole of equation 1 by negative 4, which is exactly what we did here. You see 2x minus 5y is equal to 0 times what? Negative 4. This negative 4 is from equation what? Equation 2 is the coefficient of y in equation 2. And then we multiply what? 3x minus 4y is equal to 7 times what? Negative 5. This negative 5 is the coefficient of what? Y in equation 1. So we are going to use, you see that by multiplying what? Equation 1 by the coefficient of y in equation 2. And then we multiplying equation 2 by the coefficient of y in equation 1. So now after once we expand this, that means we're going to multiply what? 2x times negative 4, negative 5y times negative 4, and 0 times negative 4. Once we do that, we're going to get this equation. And then now, once we now do the same thing for equation 2, we're going to have what? 3x times negative 5, negative 4y times negative 5, and 7 times negative 5. We're going to get what? Negative 15x plus 20y is equals to what? Negative 35. Now, if you look at it now, you see that we already have what? The same coefficient in the new equation. This is equation what? 3 and this equation 4. We have the same coefficient for y in both equations. Now the next thing we want to do is what? What are we going to do to what? These two that to cancel out. You can see we have positive and positive, and if we multiply two positive numbers that are equal, we get 0. So that's exactly why we're going to subtract what? We're going to subtract equation 1 from equation 2, which means we're going to have what? Negative 15x minus negative 18x, which is what? This one minus this one. And then we're going to have 20y minus 20y, which will give you what? 0. And then we're going to have what? Negative 35 minus 0, which is exactly what we have here. So by the time, let me repeat that again so it is clear. After we've made sure that the coefficient of any of the dependent variable in the two equations are equal, then what we need to do is what? We need to make sure that we look for what we can do to equation 1 and equation 2 such that now those two equal coefficients will cancel out. Now you can see that the coefficient of y in equation 1 is positive 20 and coefficient of y in equation 2 is positive 20. So we are going to subtract what? 20 minus 20 will give you 0. That's why we are subtracting. Let's assume this one was negative and this one was positive. You know, negative plus positive of a number of the same number will give you 0. That means we would have added in that situation. So the reason why we are subtracting is because of they are both positive. We would have added if one is positive and one is negative. But in some cases, it might not work that way. But we just need to make sure that these two things, we have to look for what to do to them. After making them equal, we have to look for whether we add them or subtract them so that they will cancel out. So now we have what? Negative 15x minus 8x plus 20y minus 20y is equal to negative 35 minus 0. So now what are we going to do? What we are going to do is what? We are going to simplify this. We know that negative times a negative number will give you a positive. So that's going to give what? 8x minus 15x. Which give us what? Negative 7x. And then we have what? 20y minus 20y is going to give you what? 0. And then we are going to equate it. Negative 35 minus 0 will give what? Negative 35. We divide both sides by what? Negative 7 because of what? That is what is disturbing x from becoming the subject of formula. So we need to take that away. Since it's combined by multiplication, we need to use division to take it away. So once we divide by that same number, we're going to have what? Negative 7x divided by negative 7 is equals to negative 35 divided by negative 7. That will give you what? Your s is equals to 5, which is exactly what we got using substitution method. Now the next thing we want to do is what? We need to substitute this answer into this equation or this equation. Note that it has to be either equation 1 or equation 2, not equation 3 or equation 4. Not the modified version of the equation, but the original question. Substitute it into the original question. It's important that I emphasize that. So now, moving forward, what we can do is what? We are going to substitute it into equation 1 in this case. So we are going to have 2x minus 5y is equal to 0. And then we are going to what? Substitute what? 5. Anywhere we see x in equation 1, we are going to replace it with 5 since they are equal. So we're going to have 2 into bracket 5 minus 5y is equals to 0. And then simplifying that 2 times 5 will give you 10 minus 5y is equals to 0. Now what you want to do is what? Subtract 10 from both sides in order to make what? Negative 5y the solid formula, after which we now divide. So now you see that when you subtract 10 from both sides, we're going to have what? Negative 5y is equals to negative 10. Since we have positive 10 here, you know, in order to eliminate 10 from this place, you subtract the same number. So now, once you divide both sides, you're going to get y is equals to what? Y is equals to what? 2. So that is the way you solve using elimination method. So you can see that basically all what we are trying to do is what? Making what? The coefficient of any of the dependent variable equal, and then looking at what? The algebraic manipulation we are going to use in order to cancel those two equal coefficients out, so that then we now convert it into a linear equation. You can see that after doing that, immediately we have a linear equation. So that is how you solve it, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Stay tuned for more.